What was the scariest thing you have seen or heard? I worked with a kid in New Baltimore, Michigan, about 30 minutes from Detroit. He was a pizza delivery guy. One day he didn't show up to work. His mom came in worried. She didn't know where he was, but his debit card was being used. He had been carjacked picking up a sub for his GF, shot in the head and left in a house they later burned to the ground. The motherfucker who killed him did it for a gang initiation. His name was Matthew Landry, and I still think about him all the time. That's so sad. I hear of people shooting random cars on the highway in my city for gang initiation. My sister's BFS cousin was shot in the neck maybe 2 years ago. Luckily he survived, so he's 15 now. I can't even begin to imagine getting shot, not to mention in the neck, not to mention being 13. My best friend called me at 3 a.m. He said, "Goodbye, honestly you were my only reason, but sometimes it just hurts too much." I immediately called the cops and drove to his house. We found him in his closet. Unfortunately he had passed away. I was only 16, but we knew each other for years. It was just me and him against the world. We would get bullied a lot, but we had each other. I miss him every day, even 3 years later. Watching the entire back of an underground mine fail in front of you with men under it. Buddy was running a scoop tram in a mine in BC when the shotcrete and rock bolts all sort of fell off the back of the drift, bring with it most of the rock above. Dude lived because the cab was reinforced, but it could have been so much worse. That's the moment your blood turns cold, because there is not a damn thing on earth you can or could have done differently. I also got to witness a buddy almost get killed by a rock burst while underground diamond drilling. The 2.5-inch core drill punched into a steam pocket and shot the drill pipe and the rig back about 10 feet in an instant. The drill operator's usually behind a steel plate that acts as a shield. There was a sliver of rock 4 inches long stuck halfway through it. My point being, underground mining is dangerous. So, this happened a long time ago. Like, seriously, the only way I remember this is because of the near-death experience. So, when I was little, I was home alone. My parents had a pet dog. I was instructed to go to sleep at 8, I think. So I fell asleep for a few hours. My parents had gone to a concert, so they were gone past 1 p.m. So I am suddenly woken up around 11 by my dog barking. I go downstairs, and he is sitting by the door. I tell him to come with me, and he keeps sitting and barking by the door. I looked out the windows, but nothing was there. Then my dog stopped and went upstairs with me. I locked my door with my dog in my room and went back to sleep. I woke up around midnight to police sirens, and police breaking my bedroom door down. Once I was back home over some break in college. My family was driving me crazy. You all know how is it once you move out and then come back, so I decided I was going to go for a run at the trail around this huge city park right by my house. It's just a 5K, very close to my house, and I used to have to run it all the time for soccer in high school, so I felt really comfortable going there even though it was late, just after 10 p.m. I just wanted to get out of the house. It's late and it's cold, so the trail around and the park are pretty dead. I see a couple who look like Olympic runner types, and that made sense that they'd be out exercising. I'm almost finished. The track is a circle and I'm almost back at the part near where I parked my car, and I see the first other person I've seen since the really fit couple. She's coming from the other direction. She's jogging, but she's doing it backwards. So I can see her, but her back is facing me. As we get closer, I start to see that it's super awkward. Her gait is almost cerebral palsy-esque. And, as you might imagine, running backward on a curved track is kind of bad idea. So her head is turned kind of far to the side so she can jog backward and stay on the trail and not hit the fence. It got weirder though. She's not in running clothes at all. She's in jeans, ballet flats, and a short-sleeved polo shirt. Her hair is down and basically all in her face. It's giving the heebie-jeebies and I don't really know why. Like sure that's not normal running attire, but it's just clothes. We're getting closer and closer to where we're going to be shoulder to shoulder for a second going separate ways. And if I were a dog the hackles at the back of my neck would have been huge. My mental state, this is weird but not a big deal, has never been so divorced from my physical state. Shaky panic attack breaths, hair on the back on my neck up, adrenaline making my veins feel weird, etc. in my life. Before this I didn't really understand the whole my body was mutinying against my brain thing that people say. Everything except my brain was telling me to turn around rather than cross ways next to this girl, but that would have meant running almost the entire track again to get to my car, and fuck that. Lol. Anyway, it's too late. I'm like 10 steps away from being shoulder to shoulder with this girl. And keep in mind, she still has her back to me. I was planning on doing that awkward grin you do when you pass someone on a smallish part of the track. But it comes and we're right next to each other and I can't look at her. And I don't. It's been like 20 steps and it hits me that if she's still running backward that now she's staring at the back of my head. And I don't fucking like it at all. I get these instant intrusive thoughts, of her finishing winding up backward and just flinging forward at the back of my head. And immediately I stop running like runner running and start fucking sprinting to my car. I get in and lock it but for some reason I just can't bring myself to start it. I just keep scanning around for her, feeling frozen. Finally whatever adrenaline issue I was having wore off and I made the short drive to my house. Barely remember it, I couldn't stop thinking about the freaky girl. Absolutely nothing happening and it's still the most freaked out and spooked I have ever been in my life. That's what I get for trying to exercise my frustration away instead of drinking like a normal person. It's been like 20 steps and it hits me that if she's still running backward that now she's staring at the back of my head. And I don't fucking like it at all. I get these instant intrusive thoughts, of her finishing winding up backward and just flinging forward at the back of my head. And immediately I stop running like runner running and start fucking sprinting to my car. I get in and lock it but for some reason my then girlfriend's roommate got ripped on some sort of drug in his room and started screaming. We went downstairs to see why he was screaming, and he just runs headfirst through the door, and looked absolutely murderous. He started to talk about how she was too loud when she closed her bedroom door and how he could never put together his spoken word album with her in the house, so he was going to kill us both right now. Then someone called, and he was like, "Hey, Mom, what's up?" It was the closest I had come to a real, actual, to the end sort of fight. This probably isn't too bad compared to others, but I went downstairs at 12 o'clock to get some cheese and saw someone shine a light into my family's kitchen. I teleported out of the bitch in 5 seconds. I told my parents and they called 911. I went downstairs at 12 o'clock to get some cheese. I laughed at this. I mean, who hasn't been there? I grew up in a rural area and would occasionally hear bobcats howl at night. Sometimes it sounds like the howling of a large cat that's in heat. But sometimes it can sound like a human baby screaming at the same time that a large cat is growl screaming. It's unsettling enough that even though I've heard it a number of times, it still gives me goosebumps and makes my heart race for the first few seconds. When I was younger, I don't remember how old, but early elementary school, I remember that I just had a strong gut feeling to wake up and sit up, so I did. I looked out my bedroom door and one of my mom's friends was in my doorway. He took a step or two and immediately lost balance and tried to grab my dresser to not fall. He ended up dragging my dresser with him and it destroyed my room. I went into autopilot and just got out of my room and went to my mom. My mom heard the crash and found him in my room and beat the shit out of him. He then ran away without shoes. I told her the story and we found out 3 to 5 days later that he overdosed. We don't know if it was on purpose or not, but he was gone. It still haunts me to this day. When I was in 6th grade I read a lot of fan fiction. I was up reading at like 3 a.m. and I felt someone staring at me. I looked up and saw a dull white figure standing in my doorway. I was tired and kinda chuckled and said, haha, oh no, a ghost. But when I said that, it moved and sprinted down the hallway. My brain immediately went into panic mode and I had an anxiety attack. It walked by the doorway once or twice, but I was too scared to get up and look. I shined my light at the doorway a few times, but it was never there. I haven't felt that amount of fear in years and I believe I never will. Grew up in Flint, Michigan. I remember one winter night a weed deal had gone wrong. The aftermath of this was a 9mm being held to the head of another person with the words "You're dead" by morning being said. The group of people I was in rather quickly dispersed after this. About an hour later a single gunshot is heard. Yeah, screw that city. My friend called the cops when it initially happened. They never showed up. I had insomnia for a long time. Still do, to a degree. I used to go days upon days without finding a way to sleep. After a few I would hallucinate. Vivid and clear illusions which I could only recognize because I knew they weren't real. My senses would betray me but my common sense would not. Most of what I saw was standard stuff. Bugs in my food, shadow people in the dark corners of rooms, movement in the corners of my eyes. But one time I didn't sleep for around 10 days. I might have caught a micro nap, or something, but I didn't get any real sleep for well over a week, and I was falling apart. I decided to try to burn some excess energy with a run. There was a path near my house. I started running around maybe noon, I think. It started off as normal as these desperate runs did. I was seeing things, shapes of people in the trees, silent and steady as they ever were, that tirelessly energy carrying me with an unnatural ease along game trail and self-beaten footpaths. I think I was starting to get tired when a sudden movement made me jump. I turned expecting nothing. The movement out of the corner of my eye, nothing more. But there was one of my shadow people, walking, so purposefully, towards me. I knew it wasn't a real person. Real people aren't a shadowy stain across my vision, but then again, my shadow people hallucinations didn't move. This one did. I ran as fast as I could until I got home. I saw countless others along the path. They seemed to notice me passing and followed, walking, so purposeful, but without menace. When I finally reached the clearing to my house, they followed me from the woods. They stopped, so many I suspected I was hallucinating from the shadows of the forest, but the angles weren't right. I rushed inside, planning to take a shower and to goddamn it, sleep, no matter what. You may think the shadows were the worst part. They weren't. I showered. I lived alone at the time, in a house in the middle of the woods near a swamp. I stepped out of the bathroom naked to see the form of a little girl, only not right. She was distorted, her proportions like a rag doll. She stepped towards me, and as light fell right I saw her face, shriveled like a corpse with two sunk eye sockets with rings upon rings around jet black pits for eyes. She said something I don't remember and I fucking ran. I had dirty gym clothes in the car, and they were all I had for a while. I slept in a coffee shop on campus. I couldn't be alone for days after that. Edit. Just want to clarify, I don't think any of this was remotely real, but it was the scariest thing I've ever seen. Sorry if this doesn't quite work as well as meeting murderers or something in answering your question. My roommate and I were driving back from the studio at roughly 2 a.m. We work and film, so it had been a long day, probably 9 a.m. to 3 a.m. We've got jazz on the radio, and we pull into our neighborhood. There's something on the road. It's about 6 feet long. I slow down. Oh, shit. Oh shit. I whisper. What? What is that? Is it a body? I will tell you right now, I always expected to keep my cool if I was ever in a situation like this. The feeling of being the person to find a dead body is absolutely chilling. My entire chest felt like it was submerged in ice. What do we do? She asked. I'm going to drive around it. We'll call the cops when we get home, okay? In retrospect, I think we both handled it pretty well. I inch closer and closer, my hand shaking at the wheel. It looks more and more like a young man wearing a gray hoodie laying on his side. Closer. Closer. Plastic fucking construction tarp. We laughed with a sense of relief I have never felt since. I was shaking for almost 2 hours afterwards. TBH, the time I actually found a dead body was less frightening than tarp on road, lol. Edit before anyone can ask. I was in a boat rowing down the river my high school screw team used to practice on. Hey, coach, is that a body? We ask, looking at the floating man corpse. What? No. Keep going. We come back around about 2 hours later. Hey, coach, are those cops? We had a lockdown at my school. Normally, before a lockdown drill, they would warn us all. There was no warning. They gave us no information, not even our teacher was given any information until afterwards. About half of us were on our phones texting our parents goodbye, the other half trying to find information about it on Facebook because that was our most reliable source. We heard a series of banging sounds. We didn't know what they were, but they sure sounded like gunshots. My mom was sending me photos of our cat to try and help me calm down. I thought I was going to die. It turned out, the threat was a call to a veteran helpline saying they had a gun and were gonna kill themselves. And when they traced the call, it led to the school tennis courts. The school never told us that. We pieced it all together through news articles and Facebook posts. It was terrifying. I don't think I really understood the gravity of school shootings until I thought I was in the middle of one.